Hello, everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode of Geeks Not Nerds, the podcast. I'm Captain Logan.
And I am Dan.
Hello, Dan.
Hello. What are we here to talk about today?
Oh, I guess I guess I will announce our topic. In case you're incapable of reading titles in YouTube videos, today Dan and I are going to be talking about comic book events. Now, this is certainly a topic that we've hit on lots of times on other videos, especially talking about new comics. Dan and I always review new comics. Appropriate to have Dan on the show for this topic, but and it's also been something that we talked about at length as its own topic. But it's been probably 2 or 3 years since we did just a straight up video about comic book events, and obviously this is a medium that is constantly changing, and events are different now than they were 3 years ago. So we thought we would revisit this and kind of talk about the current state of the industry and how the big two are handling events. And we can even jump off a little bit and compare that some, if you want to, Dan, to how some of the other companies are handling events, because it's not like DC and Marvel are the only people that do mega events anymore.
Right.
IDW has theirs now, and stuff like that. So anyway, why don't we go ahead and jump right into this by answering this question, Dan. Do you get revved up anymore for events, even if it's something that sounds really cool, or do you just or are you just immediately, like a lot of people seem to be, not all that jazzed because we get them too often?
It's a difficult kind of question for me, because I'd like to think that it's always about the creators for me. Like, when Cataclysm was announced, Bendis and Bagley on a book again in Ultimate was really exciting. Should have been really exciting to me, but the fact that it was event kind of took the wind out of the sails. I don't know. I was just kind of like, oh, that's not going to be as enjoyable as if they were doing a character-focused book. Because inherently the events, the series themselves, don't have as much of a character focus as I would like in terms of changing the people within the story. I mean, a lot of the times I like the events for the status quo and the things they change about the characters moving forward in between events. Like House of M, that really changed the X-Men universe for a long time. You had the mutants change from the ranks of millions down to 200. It changed Cyclops as a character. You took Xavier's leadership role. But that miniseries in and of itself isn't my favorite thing. And the same thing with I liked AVX well enough, but I like the post-AVX Marvel Universe much more for the stories that are being told there than the event itself, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I really, really liked AVX, but I think I think you're right. I think that the world it created is so much more interesting than it, that if I go back and read it again, I'll just kind of find myself anchoring for all new X-Men or Uncanny.
Yeah, exactly.
Where I'm at on this, Dan, is I feel like a few years ago we were complaining, some of us were complaining about, oh man, do we have to do one of these mega events every year for both companies? Now I feel like it's like we got to do 5 of them every year. We're in this place now where we have to tout things up as events that clearly were not originally conceived that way. Mm-hmm. And the best example I can think of is anything Scott Snyder writes for Batman.
Yes, that is 100% true.
And that's not to say, of course, that we haven't always had crossover air quote events between different books, where we have a heading on top of a book, and then we have part 1 here, part 2 in a different book, part 3, that sort of thing. But I feel like they're being touted up so hard now, like every one of them is the biggest, most giant deal ever, and the companies can't decide on what the most important event was for that year. And I feel like I'm in a place now where the word event isn't even the right word for it, because event implies special and not all the time. Like, the fact that we call them that and they happen constantly seems to kind of lessen the impact of what they're supposed to be. So I mean, I'm looking at Marvel this last year and I'm like, okay, what was the big event that year? Was it Age of Ultron, or was it Infinity? I don't know. They both seemed like major quote unquote earth-shattering type things, and they both led to other things, right? Age of Ultron set up a number of books, although that's not fair, because Fear itself did the same thing. A lot of these things will set up books, but I mean, okay, so that pretty much just set up some books. But then you look at Infinity, and that was at the end of the day, kind of just setting up inhumanity.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like we're getting to the point where we're doing so often where like we're just setting up events with events. I mean, that was your big problem with Trinity War by the end, where you were like,
Yeah.
I mean, this was an enjoyable story until we got to the end, and I realized it was just set up for Forever Evil. Like, it's almost perpetual setting things up. We never get the like a resolution to any story with these things anymore.
Yeah, and so they don't feel like a proper story in and of
Yeah.
themselves, and that's what can be infuriating about them. Because I'm not saying anything against any of them individually. I could point to each of them and say I this is what I liked and didn't like about this one. There were a lot of cool things in Trinity War, but yeah, you got to the end of it, and I was like, well, I had no idea we were just setting up this Forever Evil thing. It felt really abrupt and unfinished when you got to the end of it. And had I known that it was a stair step to another thing, it wouldn't have been a big deal. Because yeah, you can tell stories that continue to build. You can do sequels to things like For instance, this is a weird example, but I mean, like Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe. That turned into a trilogy, and now an ongoing thing. They're continuing to build on top of it. I don't feel like any one of those really ruins the last one that happened. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it's kind of just they're doing more of that story. But I felt like something like Trinity War was touted up like an event in and of itself, right? Like imagine if well actually that's so funny. I guess I can't come up with an example right now that's not doing this. Like I almost said imagine if Blackest Night did that, but it did. It was called Brightest Day.
Yeah.
Which ended up being really anticlimactic for me at the end because it was all about setting up Swamp Thing, and then it didn't matter because then we just did 52 and we could have just rebooted, and then we had this rebooted continuity where we could have just inserted Swamp Thing anyway.
Yeah. Very true.
I don't know what exactly I'm saying right now besides just spinning my wheels. Go ahead.
Uh, I don't know, like Battle of the Atom by the end wasn't as satisfying as I would have liked, but at least that sort of changed the game for its respective section of the Marvel universe. That's what I liked about it. Like Kitty
Yeah.
Pryde and the all new X-Men leaving Wolverine's side and going to Cyclops' one. That's a really big deal for that set of books.
I also felt like that one. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I mean, like taking the character that Bendis is poising to replace Xavier as the idealist of the X-Men. That's sort of the. I mean, Xavier was always the father figure. Now it looks like Kitty Pryde, ironically enough, the one that yells Professor Xavier is a jerk, is going to take his place and be the mother figure for like these entire team, the entire group of them, and be the glue that holds everybody together. I like that idea a lot, and I think Bendis was going to that sort of place with Battle of the Atom. I kind of wish he wrote that whole thing, but I don't know. I generally like events more when they're the more focused they are. Like the big universe spanning events, there's just so many characters that it's all about plot, and I get bored by the end.
You can't get a handle on it. And a lot of the time, it feels like it's all about being as big and massive and as expansive as humanly possible. And a lot of the time, it's just too big, and I can't get my mind around it. And isn't it funny that it's gotten to the point where that is boring? Like if you get too big and too oh man, the whole universe or all of time, space time is at stake. It's like it's just too big. You know what I mean? Like you need a singular, not necessarily a singular character. A small team could work, but for for lack of a better way to put this, I'll just say that I'd almost rather those things be through the eyes of a character. You know what I mean?
Right.
Let's see why that is such a big deal to this person. You know what I mean? Like let's have a singular human window into this big terrible thing that's going to happen. It's not usually done that. It's done like that. It's usually just like once again the whole universe is in peril. And the thing is, I feel like you can kind of do that every so often if you find interesting spins to put on it. But it gets really unrealistic when it seems like every couple months, once again, the entire Marvel universe has to come together.
Right. And I've been thinking about like all the events that I can think of that Marvel has recently put out that I really like, or at least liked more than some of the big events that they put out. And they're all sort of small and self-contained within sections of the universe. I'm thinking about like the X-Men events, Second Coming, Battle of the Atom, Schism, Spider Island. I really liked. What else? The Omega Effect crossover that Wade did when he crossed into Daredevil, avenging Spider-Man and the Punisher. That was fantastic. A little 3-issue story that brought those characters together. It was really focused on that. I mean, it's not like a big universe-spanning event, but I feel like there was a time when the characters crossing over into each other's books like that, just for 3 issues, was an event.
Yeah, Arms of the Octopus.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I like that one a lot too.
Yeah, and the thing is, I don't feel like we necessarily have too many of those because go back to the '80s, we were doing those.
Right, exactly. I'd like to see a little bit more of that just because I'm such a character progression person. Like that's my taste in story.
Yeah, mine too. And what I kind of worry about. Well, and also even if you're not, it's just like same old and gimmicky.
Right.
At least it's not like it was a few years back when I was really into DC and really not loving Marvel during like right after the Dark Reign stuff when everything was
Right.
all
Yeah,
about
fair
dark,
enough.
dark, dark, and nothing fun was being done with art, and it was all really broody and really sketchy. During that period, it seemed like that was when every time there was an event, Marvel would say, "This is the event that will change the face of the Marvel universe." I feel like now ironically, there's more of them, but they actually do that. Age of Ultron is a great example. I didn't love that book as it was going along. We talked about it. I thought it was too slow, and then you got to the end of it,
Yeah.
and I loved how it ended. And then it has had a major ripple effect on the whole universe. Like it has ended up mattering. And I think more than anybody realizes. Like I think almost every book has been impacted by this time and space coming apart thing that Age of Ultron introduced.
Yeah, and Marvel's been really tight since the Quesada era with their and post, like now that we're in Alonzo, and especially with Alonzo as well. Because like for example, they set things up like years in advance. This thing that they're doing now with the Watcher dying, that was set up in a one shot like 2 3 years ago in a little like
Wow,
2 page story written by Ed Brubaker in there. He doesn't
I
even
didn't know.
work at Marvel anymore, which is it. I find that interesting and speaks to the skill of their editorial team. Like they're able to keep all that stuff together.
Yeah, they're really organized. They've got this structure. They're forward
Yeah,
thinking.
they're headed to a place,
That's
even if
great.
there's no end in sight. They're headed somewhere. Um, and like some of the events I can say like didn't affect the universe in a way that I liked, like Secret Invasion. That didn't affect the universe in a way I liked in that Dark Reign was the result of that. And then the whole I didn't really like that. I like some of the ideas that were put forth, like Norman Osborn running the Marvel Universe. Like that sounds like a cool premise in and of itself. But like you said, a lot of the books just got a little too bleak for me personally.
And then you got things where it's almost the opposite of that, where nobody liked the event, but then what it gave us was kind of interesting. Like nobody liked Siege, but then Asgard stuck on Earth was a cool idea.
Well, that was from JMS's run on Thor, the Asgard Beyond Earth. He actually destroyed Asgard on Earth, and
See,
that revealed.
I wasn't even reading current right around when that
Right.
happened, so I didn't realize that. I thought Siege was what's crashed it into the Earth. Is it
No,
not?
that was actually the thing that made JMS leave the book because he had plans to do stuff with Asgard, and then Bendis was like, "I'm blowing Asgard up," and they're like, "You have to not do your stuff, JMS." So we just left, which was
Ooh,
unfortunate. But yeah, he didn't get to end his Thor run properly. But anyway, that's a different thing.
I feel like sometimes also, I'll go to another example
Sure,
with
sure.
Marvel, and I also want to switch to DC in a minute because that's a total different ballgame.
It is. It
Um,
is.
but with Marvel right now, or not right now, sorry, with Marvel, sometimes you get events too where the event itself might be kind of okay as a standalone story, and then like it sort of changes some things, but you could have easily gotten those changes without it. Like Fear itself, I felt like that set up at the end of it a lot of new books. But like, did we need Fear itself in order to do what was done with, for instance, Jason Aaron's Hulk? I think you
No,
could have done Split Off without that. I don't think you needed that. Same thing with what they did with Iron Man. Like, I just don't think you needed that book for those things. Well, I don't know about Iron Man. I didn't read that to
I
be
think
fair.
Fear itself was. I mean, I didn't read every Marvel book that was coming out of Fear itself at that time, like
Yeah,
because I'm with you. Like there was a point before all of this new Marvel stuff that we're getting now was coming out that I wasn't so hot on Marvel. Like I was reading just as much DC as Marvel probably, and that's weird for me because I'm just so much more of a Marvel person I am DC. But yeah, the only book I picked up out of that was The Mighty Thor by Fraction, and that was going on before Fear itself. They just use it as an excuse to change Thor into Journey into Mystery and then relaunch it with a new number one.
right. Well, and you read Jason Aaron's
I did.
Hulk.
Yes, yes, that's right.
That that did come out of that. But like I said, I don't think it needed
No,
Fear
I don't
itself.
think so. I mean, Hulk wasn't even all that involved in that, from what I remember, right?
Yeah. Um, so I don't know. The other thing that's happening a lot right now, switching over for a minute to DC, is
Sure, sure.
with events. Well, actually, let me cap that off real quick by saying by kind of reiterating that like the problem for me isn't the events individually. It's just that I feel like we make too big of a deal out of giant universe bending, everything's going to die plots, and like, just get a little bit more human than that, and I'll care more, no matter what kind of story it is, and how big it is, and how it's being told, like in what form it's being told, right?
Right, right.
Um,
I mean,
but
the
yeah, go ahead.
events, like when they get like that, don't necessarily annoy me because they exist, because like I simply wouldn't have to read them, right?
No, you
But
wouldn't.
the thing that bothers me is when,
That's a good point.
yeah, when they encroach on the ongoing stories that I'm enjoying with characters by themselves, and like the book feels like it has to meander to deal with the consequences of this event, and it ends up being really inconsequential for that character. Like, okay, mutants at the end of House of M, that's a place that you would want to explore because there's no more mutants except for like 200 left on the earth. That's something that you would have to deal with. You can't really write an X-Men book post House of M without talking about that. But like, for example, I thought Indestructible Hulk got a little bit meandering after Age of Ultron. It was just kind of Hulk going through time. It was fun, but it wasn't this, it didn't have the same sort of focus that it had before all that stuff, right? And now it's just tying into Inhumanity. Like I feel like it's just tying into whatever is going on in the Marvel universe event wise at the
Yeah.
time.
Well, yeah, what a great point, Dan. The worst book that I can see, like the book that's being affected by that the most that I'm reading is Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yes, very.
I think Infinity and then Inhumanity have ruined that book right now. I mean, like the last 3 or 4 issues, I just don't care, man. Like they're not progressing the characters. Bendis isn't progressing the characters that I want to read about in that book right now. They're just having to deal with stuff from those events. And Infinity, I didn't even know what the heck was going on half the time, and in Humanity, I'm not really paying any attention to. So,
Right, and now you've
like
got.
maybe the people that are reading those do like that, but the thing was, Bendis had a
Sure, sure.
surefire direction from the beginning of that book. You could tell it's got a tone, it's got its own flavor, it's got a personality, and it keeps encroaching on it. And
Yes.
like you said, those events keep encroaching on it. And I feel like because with Bendis, I feel like sometimes I can read his frustration through a page.
Yeah.
Maybe I read too much into his stuff, but I felt it with Spider-Man, and I'm feeling it with Guardians of the Galaxy. I can feel his hands being tied and mandates from on high, making him do things that his heart's not in. And I'm seeing that with Guardians.
Yeah, and now you've got him, which I think I'm going to be very interested to see because I'm going to keep reading Guardians through the next story that they're doing simply because I'm reading all new X-Men and the trial of Jean Grey is happening and it's crossing
Yeah.
over into that, which is an event thing which kind of has me worried, but at the same time, if Bendis is working within the confines of something that he had planned and it's both of his books solely crossing over, it might be a lot better. Who knows?
Oh, yeah. Well, I bet it will be because, like you said, it's at least all stuff that he's writing.
Yeah.
I mean, like he wasn't involved with Infinity. He's not involved with Inhumanity. Like those aren't things he was working on at all, as far as I know.
No, he
Um,
wasn't. And I felt like the only reason he had to tie into Infinity was he felt obligated because Thanos and Guardians have a thing.
but it could have tied in a more interesting way,
Right,
right? Like I
yeah.
felt like it was pretty superfluous. Like I don't remember what happens in those issues. And
Right.
given that it's Thanos and Gamora, and we just locked up Thanos at the end of that, although that's neither here nor there because we're gonna do another Thanos thing here pretty soon anyway, so I guess it
Right.
doesn't matter. what happened at the end of Infinity. But I mean, like, couldn't we have done something with Gamora and Thanos, or maybe Bendis thought it was too early to even go there? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not really familiar because there is some talk about like in the previous volume of Guardians, like them killing Thanos or something, but I didn't read that, so I'm not familiar with how all of that worked. I don't know what's
Well, I'm
what's
just
up with
saying,
that,
given
but
that Gamora is his daughter, you'd hope that maybe they would have a little bit of panel time in that,
right, right,
especially.
right. I'm just speaking your point of maybe he was thinking it was too soon to bring them back together. If they just had a big arc within the previous volume, I don't really know.
Like, depending on where it goes, I might look back on this as somewhat of a missed opportunity, considering that the whole thing with Thanos in Infinity was all about killing a son. Well, he's also got a daughter that's in Guardians of the Galaxy. So I mean, like, let's do something with that. But whatever. I mean, again, that's neither here nor there. I don't know what Bendis's grand plan is. But going back to what you mentioned about Trial of Jean Grey, I gotta tell you, pal, I'm excited for that event because it is maybe the only event that crossing over multiple books I have ever thought about reading that I already have all the books on my pull list for. Like, that's
Right,
never happened. Even with Battle of the Atom, I had to buy X-Men. That was the only book I wasn't reading. I think in that arc,
right.
but
The female Brian Wood written book, right?
yes, yes. Mm-hmm.
And the cool thing that I think is going to be awesome about Trial of Jean Grey is at the beginning of that Guardians book, there was a lot of discussion about like the way the universe is sort of governed in the Marvel universe, where they all had that like council with all the races from the different planets and stuff. And
Yeah,
with
I love that.
Phoenix being, associated with the Shi'ar and all that sort of thing, I bet all that universe politics that the Guardians had at the beginning will come into play with that
I
Space
hope so.
Marine.
When we did our top 10 comics from last year, I almost had Guardians number 3 in there, which was the book that did that introduced all that. Because I just thought that was really that all those politics were really interesting, and you had this really interesting eclectic assortment of different species and stuff, and it felt like real heightened science fiction. It was cool stuff, and we need to get back to that in that book. So I guess I guess what I'm saying is, to your point earlier, so many of these events affect the regular books that we're reading, and you got to remember that. I mean, like, we're having to spend money on these books. We're having to buy them, and every now and again, they interrupt a story that's being told with not a fill-in, but a event connecting thing that you just don't care about, and a lot of the time you don't need. A lot of time they're skippable.
Yeah, and the thing that frustrates me also the most, and we'll move on to DC because I feel like we're talking about Marvel mostly in this video, but I think it speaks to the point that Marvel has been a lot more event touting than DC has in general, so there's just more to talk about. But
Say
the
that.
way that Marvel initially collects their events annoys me to no end. Like
I would
we
bring that
we've
up.
talked about this before, but like it speaks to your point of what you were talking about before. They put out a $75 to $100 hardcover with all the tie-ins in it for the story that's supposed to be accessible for people to break into their comics this year with all the characters that they know and love. And it's the first thing that's available. And it's got a bunch of tie-ins with characters that they may not know or care about, and the stories that are associated with that aren't even all that relevant to the main story that they should be reading anyway. Like I don't understand what the point is. Like who is that book for?
Yeah, and I would also argue that they're not, and I mean, like, this is going to make me sound a little hoity-toity. I feel like they're not thinking about the artistry of the work when they do that, because, and I mean, like, it's a commercial medium.
Right.
The events are the most commercial possible part of this commercial medium. So a lot of the time, there's not a whole lot of artistry to them anyway. But I mean, like, AVX, I thought was a pretty darn good book, right?
Yeah, I
Well,
agree. I like
you
AVX a lot.
and I mean, like, I thought, you and I reviewed that book at length. It's got 3 or 4 different writers, and the transitions are incredibly smooth. And if you didn't see the credits, you'd never be able to tell when Aaron takes over and Bendis begins or whoever. I mean, like,
Yeah.
it's fantastic. And so anyway, I think as events go, I think that's one of the more artistic and well told full stories. Okay, well, the problem is it's got its own pacing. Okay, there is a certain pacing to that 12-issue story. Yes, it has tie-ins. Yes, it has other things that are related to it, but it's not meant to be read with 4 or 5 other things in between each issue. So
Right.
when you hand somebody a big hardcover and you try to get them to read it that way, it's clunky. If I were going to buy for instance, if I bought Flashpoint and then bought Dick Grayson of the Flying or Dead Man of Flying Raisins
Yeah.
and a couple of those other ones, the Batman one. I wouldn't want a big trade that put those things in between all the issues of Flashpoint. I would want to read Flashpoint and then read everything that tied into it. Now, I know
Right.
when you're reading single issues, you're going to end up reading it that way, but that's only because of the way they're published, and I don't feel like they're necessarily meant to be done that way. I mean, you and I have talked about with like Ninja Turtles, for instance, sometimes the micro series you want to read one before the next issue comes out, but those are done deliberately that way. I feel like you could put out a trade of Ninja Turtles and put a couple of those in there and it would make sense, but that's not what we're talking about
Right.
here with like AVX and stuff like that, the way they're publishing those.
Yeah, and like Ninja Turtles is a line of 2 at the most 3 books coming out at the same time, whereas like the universe is much more contained, and that's why I tend to enjoy those events a little bit more. Again, because they're more focused. You get a smaller cast of characters. You don't have to have Doctor Doom, Spider Man, the Thing, Electro, just everybody in this same book. Like I've probably never seen those specific characters in an event together, but you know what I mean. That's the point.
No, that should happen. That sounds great.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But
With Ninja Turtles, you don't get random interludes. It's not like suddenly we're gonna stop everything to go do this random thing.
right.
Like even when we suddenly stop and tell a story about Karai, like with the micro series, it ties in. It doesn't just tie into the main book. There's stuff in there that you need.
Right, exactly. And I'm trying to think of like the DC events that I've enjoyed since they've done 52 as well. And like one of my favorite things that they've done since 52 was Throne of Atlantis, which was a crossover between Justice League and Aquaman. And that
Yeah,
basically set up the Silver Age Aquaman status quo, where he's on the throne of Atlantis, and Aquaman's a superhero and struggling to be a king at the same time. Like that's where Jeff John's been building since his entire Aquaman run. And the story for if you're only reading Justice League is still mildly interesting. But I felt like the build up to that event and the payoff was really great. Maybe the issue is too, we're not giving these events enough time to build up the stakes necessary to make them feel interesting. Because like that Aquaman run had I forget which issue it started in, maybe like issue 14. Like there was 13 issues of build up for that, almost a year until that crossover happened and the status quo was changed. And they had, since Marvel has these huge universe spanning events, they can build it up in like different books. But like if you're doing an event every 6 months, it's like, well, I mean, have we taken enough time to build the stakes necessary for this story to feel interesting? I don't know if that's a valid point or not, but I don't, what do you think?
yeah. No, I hear what you're saying, and also I just feel like DC as an entity hasn't had their ducks in a row like Marvel
Yeah.
has. And so they'll know they're working toward an event, but they might change what it is at the last minute. And to be fair, it's not like Marvel's never done that, but with Marvel it's more in like what they're going to call it or how they're going to release it. Not so much in what it is exactly.
Right.
I not that I've done research or talked to anybody involved or anything about this, so I could be totally off base. But man, and I know I've said this before, but when they were touting up Trinity War almost 2 years before it came out, I would be very surprised if they knew at that point that was going to just turn into Forever Evil. I really think that at the beginning of 52, they came up with this thing called Trinity War, and they thought that was going to be the first big, huge, universe-spanning event between the books. And then it turned into Forever Evil, which, I mean, at least so far, I've kind of enjoyed that.
Yeah, I've enjoyed that
You
so
know,
far too.
that's a fun book. But I mean, like, it's weird because Trinity War ended up being another one of those going between several books kind of events, but they played it like it was, even though it was between several events, like it was, Infinite Crisis big.
Really?
But then,
Oh, interesting.
but but then, I mean, that's what I always felt like. But maybe I'm just saying that because I had heard of it months and months before it
Right.
happened.
And I didn't read Trinity War, but from like the early stuff I was reading in 52, I think you're right. Like I felt like they injected that Greek mythology stuff that wasn't in the Wonder Woman book, like the thing with Pandora, just to set that up, you know?
Well, they did. I mean, like, because they did all those Easter eggs with the girl in the red hood,
Yeah.
in the background constantly, and I mean, like, a lot of readers at the beginning of 52 thought that was really fun. They were trying to figure out who that was and everything, and then it turned out that it was this Pandora person, and they kind of told us who she was way faster than anybody thought they would, because that was at the end of the first Justice League arc. Like, she had a backup feature at the end of that, and it was like, oh, that's who that is. Okay.
Yeah.
So like 6 months in, we knew, and then that was all setting up Trinity War. Yeah, I don't know. I expected that to matter more, and I feel like you can read. I mean, you can read Forever Evil without that.
Yeah, and when I went into the comic book store last week, like people were telling me like, "Oh, you're reading Forever Evil? You're reading the Justice League books?" I'm like, "No, I couldn't care any less to read those." And they're like, "Oh, well, you're missing all of this stuff." And I'm like, "I don't know. I think DC is doing their main event books in the right way in that I'm having a good time with Forever Evil, and I am not reading any tie-ins besides the ones that I choose to. Like, I'm reading the Flash Rogues one because I like those characters, but I don't need to read that to understand what's going on in the book.
And I'm reading the Arkham one because I like those characters.
Yeah,
And I decided as soon as we heard about that you would read one and I would read the other.
yeah,
And the thing, and like, I'm fine with that. I think it's kind of fun when you'll read in the event something that's clearly related to this. To this offshoot thing that you're reading, and you go, oh, okay, I know what they're talking about because I'm reading this offshoot, but it's not necessary for the greater picture. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure there's stuff because there's stuff in Forever Evil that's connected to Arkham War, where, like, there's because some of those characters are involved, right? So I mean, like, there's some stuff in there about I'm trying to remember it, Scarecrow or Bane or who, but, like, some of those people. I think even Man-Bat's in there someplace or mentioned. But then, like, I'm sure there's something in there about the Rogues too. Like, they will cross in and out and they will mention things and there'll be some connection. But I don't have to read anything but that main book if I don't want to. That's how those should be. I've always thought that.
yeah.
Um,
And it's almost like DC is, at least right now, I can't speak to any of the other like big crossover events because I was never interested enough in like the entire DC universe to read their events necessarily. Like I read Blackest Night and was thoroughly confused as to what was going on because I didn't read any of Jeff Johns' Green Lantern besides Rebirth. But I like a lot of the DC villains, so I checked out Forever Evil. But anyway, it seems like what Marvel does is with these events, they'll have all these tie-ins and they'll be building towards a status quo to play in for a little while, and they'll do another event. Whereas like with DC, it's all about establishing a status quo with the event and then playing in there. Like with Forever Evil, you get the status quo with the villains like taking over the Earth, and like the same thing with Flashpoint happened. You had the world change, and then you get play in there for a little while, and when the event's over, you go back to status quo to some degree.
yeah. So I mean, like, who do you think is doing it better right now?
Well, I think I don't know. It's like pick your poison. I
Yeah,
think
that's
Marvel, just to my taste, I like what they do a little bit better because I like to progress. I like things to change rather than like, oh, okay, now. I mean, like, not the DC universe and the characters don't change, but it seems like they always return to status quo a little bit quicker than the Marvel universe does necessarily. I don't know. What do you think? Like, what's your general opinion about it? Like, because I haven't read every DC event. I'm going to be honest with you. The
Well, I haven't
Marvel ones
either.
I've read, but the DC ones I'm kind of fuzzy on.
I just feel like in the last few years, DC has done fewer of them. I mean, like, or at least of them that I feel like I need. Because the thing is, with Marvel, anytime, going back to, like, ever since Civil War, it seems like anytime there's a big event, and I don't mean like the ones spanning books like different monthlies. I mean, like we're doing a mini series, and then here's the checklist of all the other spinoffs you could
Right.
get. Anytime they do that, I feel like I probably need to read it to appreciate the universe at large. Where if I read that, when people talk about it in other books, I'll get it. That's not to say that every book I must have that in order to understand what's going on, but I might appreciate it more. So I usually try to keep up with it. Right now, I'm in a place where with Marvel, I can't trust what I really need and what I don't. I feel like I could have probably skipped um, Infinity, but I'm glad I didn't skip Age of Ultron. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm skipping Inhumanity. I hope that's not a mistake. You see what I'm saying? And I find that difficult with DC. I feel like their events. I don't know if I'm right about this. I feel like their events tend to be kind of a little bit more generalized, to where since at the end they don't like things are resolved um, to the point where it doesn't change the universe all that much, or if it does, it's pretty easy to jump in and figure things out. You could even skip the events if you wanted to. So, I mean, like, I see what you're saying. What is really the point of a big mega crossover event if it's not going to mean anything at the end? But then at the same time, you might have a big mega crossover event that's just kind of a story they wanted to tell, and then you get to the end of it, and then if you didn't read it, it's okay. I can kind of see the wisdom in both of those
Yeah.
models, right? So that's the only problem with it. Like I, you could skip Flashpoint and just read 52 because all Flashpoint really does is say, hey, there's this new continuity we just
Yeah.
rebooted. You know what I mean? But then Flashpoint on its own has some merit. It's not brilliant, and I don't like how it ends, but I mean, like, there's some merit to it. Um, some.
Yeah. And I
so,
was just
so,
so
so
excited to see a DC Universe event that was Flash centric at the time that I was like, this is awesome. I don't know, because that's like never really been done before. Like Barry had a big role in Crisis on Infinite Earths, but it wasn't like inherently connected to the Flash mythology at all. I don't know. I thought that was really cool. Uh,
Yeah, I thought it was cool too. It's just like you said earlier with a lot of these things, it wasn't character driven
oh yeah,
enough.
exactly.
Because by the end of it, it was just about getting to the next big thing, and I didn't feel like it was really saying a lot about any particular character, especially because everybody's kind of different at the end of it. So it's like well, we can't really we can't really tell a story with a beginning and a middle and an end for a character. Here's what they want, and here's the result of that. Because at the end of it, they're not even who they were at the start of it. They're entirely different people, or at least partly different people, right? Like, you
Right.
get to
Yeah.
the end of it, and Barry Allen has a different set of memories. So,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, I was sort of the most frustrating thing about Flashpoint for me was there were so many interesting character changes that you wouldn't want to see permanent, but in a temporary sense, they're interesting enough that I would have liked to have seen them explored. Like the Thomas Wayne Batman thing. That would have been awesome to explore for a little while, only than 3 issues. The Aquaman thing where he's like a dictator that's fighting Wonder Woman. That would have been really interesting to explore for more than 3 issues. What Scott Snyder did with Superman, where he was found by the government before Martha Kent and
right,
Clark Kent,
yeah,
Pa Kent,
yeah,
found
Project.
him in the cornfield or whatever. That would have been an interesting idea to potentially explore for more than 3 issues again. You know?
In fact, I just now thought of this. May I suggest a possible alternative that might have made more people happy with what they did with Flashpoint, but would have been risky.
Sure.
But I feel like ultimately that was the problem with DC at the time, is that yeah, they were sort of taking risks in suddenly rebooting like that, but also they needed to take their time with it because it was obvious that it was too much of it was too much of a rush job.
Yeah.
What I would have done is I would have handled it kind of like they handled Death of Superman, in that I would have let that status quo linger. Like when we had Death of Superman, they kill him off, and then they do World Without a Superman, and they do Funeral for a Friend, and they let the books go for a while without the character in them, and then they just quit publishing Superman books for like 6 months, I think.
Mm.
What I would have done with this, I don't mean I would have quit publishing any books for 6 months at all. What I'm suggesting is they should have just let Flashpoint be the universe for like 4 or 5 or 6 months,
That would have been
and
awesome.
and just played in it, and so because then it would have felt a little bit more like a real proper reboot, right? Like we live in this status quo for a while, and we get to play in the sandbox and live with these characters for a while, and then maybe we could have more gradually turned it into 52.
Hmm.
That's what I would have done. Or really crazy radical notion, let Flashpoint simply be a transition into 52 in the first place without this other universe in between it. Even though I enjoyed that universe, that as a massive Elseworlds event would have been epic.
Yeah, I like I said, there's a lot of ideas that made the world interesting enough that I would have liked to have seen it fleshed
Citizen
out.
Cold was really cool. I
It
would have loved to have
was,
seen.
yeah.
I would have loved to have seen like a 10 or 12 Citizen Cold series. I mean, like there's a lot of neat stuff, and I just loved how like completely radically different everything was. I mean, it felt like a very different world, you know, like you could have seen some neat tie-ins. You know, you could have seen more action figures. You could have seen a couple of like a video game or something. Like live in this world for a while and do some stuff with it.
Yeah.
Let that be DC for half a year.
And
That's what
even
I would have done.
from a business standpoint, they could have had their cake and eaten it too. If you made
Yeah.
all of those number ones that they put out as tie-ins, as ongoing series for, you don't even announce how long they are. Just say this is a number one for this character in this book, and then they do it again like 6, 7 months later and reboot the entire universe. They would have sold thousands of copies.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. With DC, the only other thing I wanted to mention, as far as events go, because there's a thing that they are doing that is really driving me crazy.
Oh, sure.
I guess I'm making it sound like I like DC events better than Marvel events right now. No, I don't. Individually, a story is a story, and I'll read it if I like it. I'm just saying, like I said, I'm just saying that with Marvel, I'm having a difficult time telling what's important and what's not
Mhm.
sometimes for the because again the thing with that universe right now is that it's too tight in a way. I mean, I like how tight it is, but the problem is everything affects everything else. So if you skip something that's touted up as really major, are you gonna kind of regret that later? So with DC, you at least don't have that problem right now. Most of the books are standing fine on their own. Green Lantern feels like a decisively different book than, say, Superman or Supergirl or
Yeah,
Action
heck,
or something.
Green Lantern feels like it's in the old universe, let alone feeling like a different book.
Yeah, exactly. And again, pros and cons to both. We complained a long time for that first year of 52 that it didn't that it was pretending to be a cohesive universe, but everything felt like it was in a separate world. But then they would cross over and it was wonky. That's gotten better. It feels a little bit more cohesive, but you still have you still have distinct tones. And again, Marvel books have distinct tones, but they also feel like they could live in the same
Right, I
universe.
feel like
52 is
52.
getting better at that
Yeah,
finally.
I feel like 52 only feels like a universe when Jeff Johns writes it.
You, I would have to linger on that a little bit because I feel
Like,
like I want to counter that, but I can't decide why.
what other writer has written a big event for them and had it feel like the universe is together? I think he's the only one that's taken a stab at it so far.
Well, that's true. Yeah, you're right. Because I mean, Trinity War was him too.
Yeah,
So
Trinity War, Forever Evil, the Throne of Atlantis, like all of their like even
it's
small
true.
crossover events was Jeff Johns. I mean, like even the Bat universe, you've like I feel like that is in a perpetual crossover. Like we had Zero Year going on, and that's still happening in Snyder's book, but now they're doing this Gothopia thing. I don't even know what that is in the other Bat
Yeah,
books.
and that's a great segue because that's the big annoying thing I was going to talk
Oh yeah.
about. When they feel like, and I've seen it pretty much just with Snyder, but it's like when they feel like, oh, here's a story that is going to sell well that we can capitalize and milk for all it's worth. We're going to take what would have been just a normal story arc in a book and turn it into a checklist. I really hate that. That drives me crazy. Because I feel like Snyder can't make up a story without every other freaking Bat book having to be involved, or even other things. Because you mentioned Zero Year. Why did we have to do? Why do we have to tie that into other books that weren't back books?
Why did Green Arrow need to have a 0 year issue? Like, even if that was good, why did that need to happen?
Well, and A, I didn't think it was that good, and B, I thought that well, I mean, to your point about Johns, maybe you're right about that because they don't that doesn't feel like a cohesive thing. Like that felt like it felt pretty hackneyed. You know, it was like, well, we've got to have him put on a costume the same year Batman did just to get it into 0 year. That's that's too easy. I mean, like I don't know. That was gimmicky, I thought. And something you've complained about before that we didn't even talk about is this whole business of let's do an event inside of an event with its own checklist and pretend like it's also super important.
Yeah.
Because Forever Evil's doing that. There's this other thing called Forever Evil something else. What is that? Do you remember what it's called?
I have no idea, but I care so little.
So little about it. Yeah, I forget what it is, but it's like Forever Evil something something.
Yeah,
Is
and
it a
they're touting it
Justice?
up as an event within Forever Evil. It's like,
Yeah, it says a Forever Evil event, and then it has like there are advertisements in our comics for this, and then it has this huge checklist, which if if um if I'm not mistaken, looks as long or longer than Forever Evil. Like
yeah,
it's crazy. Like I don't mind having a tie-in miniseries that you could skip if you wanted to. I mean, I'm really enjoying the Arkham War thing. I'm glad we got that.
same with
But
the
like
Flash series. I agree.
yeah, but man, we didn't need that. And I can even kind of deal with something like Night of the Owls because you read Court of the Owls and you don't need it. You can totally skip Night of the Owls. Again, they put out a trade where they acted like you needed it, but you don't. So I mean, like again, that was a little bit annoying because they felt like they had to span something and milk it that they didn't need to. But that's not as bad as this whole like let's do an event inside of an event thing. That's really silly.
It is. It's the events are just like, and I feel like we're part of the problem because you know, we say, oh, they do these things with events that we don't like, and then we get too curious. Like
And you're absolutely right. Yeah.
they put Jason Aaron on an event where the Watcher gets killed, and it's going to be a detective story going around the Marvel universe. I'm like, well, how can I not try that? At least the first issue, and then I get intrigued and I stay on, and then the last issue isn't satisfying. And then I'm like, oh, I don't like this, and then we come on here and talk about how much we were dissatisfied.
Yeah, we're basing our opinions on prior experience. We've been burned a few times on certain things, and so it's easy to look at the future and be like, well, here's a pattern. This is what they do. But then at the same time, we don't want to judge things prematurely before we've read them. And just assume everything's going to be the same. So I mean, we're sort of like an animal walking up to an electric fence and not realizing that if we got shocked before, we're going to get shocked every time we walk up to that electric fence.
Yeah.
But then the problem is sometimes to stretch this metaphor past credulity. Sometimes the dude turns on the fence and sometimes he doesn't because sometimes the events are fine. Like I didn't love Fear itself insofar as what it did for the universe. I didn't feel like I needed it. And I just didn't love that in the first place. But then AVX was great, and I'm really really glad I read that. So what do you do? So yeah, I mean, like you want to give things a chance. We don't want to be raging fanboys and be like, oh man, events are always terrible. I don't like making blanket statements. So like you said, when they put out one that seems really super intriguing, I want to try it. Right, we are. Yeah, we're too curious.
Yeah, and that was the thing with Infinity. Like, how could we not try an event book with Thanos on the cover, written by Jonathan Hickman?
Yeah,
like,
and to be fair, it's not bad.
No, it's not bad. It's a little inconsequential and confusing because I didn't read everything that was required. But at the same time, I feel like I should have to buy one book, and that's it to understand what's going on.
I really enjoyed how it ended. Have you read 6 yet?
I have not. I've heard. That's just what I heard. I haven't been able to buy 6 yet.
Yeah, it's actually really cool. Once I got to the end of it, okay, well, I'm glad I read this now. But anyway, There was one other thing that I wanted to bring up, and now I'm trying to remember what the heck it was. Cataclysm. I want to briefly talk about Cataclysm because part of the
Sure,
reason
sure.
that that Dan and I were considering doing a podcast on this topic was because of Cataclysm. Another big element to all this that can be very annoying is not just like you get to the end of an event and it's not consequential enough or it just leads into another one, but it actually does have some kind of big exciting or surprising ending or big thing that happens toward the end that you already knew 3 or 4 issues before the ending came, before you got the final issue, because of the way books are solicited in comics. And so Cataclysm, Dan and I have been talking a long time about, oh man, this looks like the end of the Ultimate Universe. What a neat way to do that. And then we know that they're continuing it. So now it's hard to care as much. We know how that ends, or at least we know that it doesn't. We know that it doesn't end. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
we know that it's going to end like every other, earth-shattering ultimate event where like all the characters die except for 10 of them, like the last two.
Everyone is complaining that it's the same thing as Ultimatum. What makes it worse than Ultimatum, though, is that it's well, I didn't read Ultimatum. Maybe I'm wrong about this.
Awful.
Isn't it more? Isn't it more books though?
I I can't remember if there was a ton of tie-ins. I remember they did the same sort of thing where they canceled the books and did like miniseries for some of them, like Ultimate Spider-Man. Bendis did an aftermath 2-issue mini of
Oh,
Ultimatum. Um,
I'm still having a really hard time not looking at Cataclysm as you have to buy all of it. Like, I don't know why. I'm just like, it's really hard to look at that. I mean, I know that technically it is a miniseries with spin-offs, but man, like just the way I've been reading it, I keep feeling like it all goes together.
yeah, I mean, and fair enough. That speaks to the quality of the editing and the writers involved, I would imagine, right? Because you got, is it Fialkov writing half of it and Bendis writing the other half? Because Bendis is doing
Yeah,
Spider-Man in the main and Fialkov's doing Ultimates and X-Men.
I think you're right about that, but I think it also speaks to decompression because
Sure.
there's a lot of stuff going on in that could have easily been condensed and paced in more effectively in far fewer issues. Like way too much of that. You read an issue and you go, wow, nothing happened in this.
Mhm.
What Galactus is standing there and people are talking about him. The end.
Yeah, we got a whole mini-series about that before this to set it up, too.
Yeah, I know. Oh man, yeah, that's hilarious. But I don't know, and that's one of those things where I wouldn't even know that if it weren't for the fact that I collect Galactus, so I'm buying all those issues because they all have Galactus in them. But yeah, so I don't know that sort of thing can be really infuriating too. But that's just a comic book thing in general. That's not just an event thing. Knowing a huge spoilers about because like you never get in comics these days, especially with the big two, you never get big, huge um, plot points from a story. You always know about them before you read it.
The only exception I can think of recently, and I don't even know if this was leaked beforehand, I didn't really see it, but I know that Marvel kept the end of Amazing Spider-Man 700 very hush hush. That,
Oh, that's fair.
like, the point is, they could keep it a secret if they really wanted to. If they wanted people to be surprised that, follow the comic book news, I suppose, and not and solicit this stuff a little bit more inconspicuously.
Discreetly, yeah. The only because the thing is, somebody listening might be thinking, well, Cap, you could just not read any comic news, and be on media blackout for that kind of thing. And I mean, even that can be difficult, just being on Facebook and having any friends at all that are into this stuff.
Right.
But even beyond that, okay, let's say that you're a hermit and you live in a cave, except for when you go and you get your comic books. And let's say that you don't have any friends at all because you're a hermit, and and you go to the comic book store and you don't talk to anyone because you're antisocial and you hate people, but you like reading comic books. And you get your pull list and you go home and you read your comic books. You still, most of the time, are going to know most huge, major, earth-shattering plot points Although, the one in Uncanny X-Men I never saw anything about. With the death of those characters, I was a little surprised about that.
Right.
That tells me that's not going to stick. But anyway, you and I can talk about that later. I don't even want to talk about that right now.
Right. Fair.
But let's say that guy takes his comics home. He's still gonna find out about most of them because of advertisements. So the only way you could do it is if you were that hermit guy and you had no internet access and you bought everything in trade. It's the only way you could do it.
And even if you bought everything in trade, you might even know by then too, because they're released later. And with the single issues,
But I'm just saying you at least wouldn't have the advertisements. Like if you didn't talk to anybody, you bought them in trade, then you might be able to be surprised by things.
right? Yeah, and you're right about the advertisements. Like I wouldn't be surprised if the next issues of Cataclysm we pick up have ads for the new relaunch Ultimate books in there.
Yeah. I mean, that's how it always works. Boy, I hope this didn't come off as a super, super negative podcast. I think mostly what we were kind of discussing was just a lot of the negative side of events right now. I mean, a lot of pros too. It's just that it can be a very infuriating thing to figure out what you want to spend your money on. I mean, that's where a lot of it comes down for for me.
Yeah, and I mean, we were talking about the negative aspect of it, but like at the same time, we talked about things we like too. Like, I mean, I really like Spider Island. I really liked pretty much all the X-Men events since Messiah Complex. I liked House of M. AVX was good. I like Forever Evil so far.
Well, I mean, if we're gonna go all the way back to something like House of M, I mean, like I could name all kinds of stuff of DC stuff I like. You know what I mean? Like I liked Blackest Night more than you did. I thought it was hilarious. Blackest Night was a lot of fun to read. And I'm with you. I had no idea what the heck I was reading at the time of that. Really enjoyed it. And then Brightest Day I loved up until the last 3 issues. But even before that, Infinite Crisis is really good.
I've never read that before.
I really like it. Go back before that. I've never read Final Crisis. I've still never done that. But you go back before that, you got Identity Crisis. That's brilliant. That's one of the. I don't know if that's considered a big crossover event, but I mean, it's like a lot of the DC universe.
And it's got Crisis on the cover, so I guess
yeah,
probably right. I don't know.
Have you ever read Identity Crisis?
I have not read that.
Oh God, you've got to read. Oh man, that is essential reading, man. Identity Crisis is cool because it's not a crisis book. It's not about all the universes mixing together. It's actually about an identity crisis, and it's a mystery story. And
that's really the one where someone gets murdered, right? In the Justice League, like have to figure out the mystery and all that kind of thing. It's Brad Meltzer.
Yes, it's Meltzer.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I wouldn't have been able to come up with that right away, so thanks for that.
But yeah, that's something I've been meaning to get around to read for a while. It's just like I'm such a studier of things, I guess. Like I don't know if I find something I like, I want to know like a lot about it. And
oh yeah, sure.
With Marvel, they have such a rich like history and continuity that like appeals to me. I'm like the opposite of what people perceive new readers to be. Like that's why I wanted to jump into comics, is like these characters have 50 years of history. Heck yeah, man. I want to dive head first into that and study it, and that'll be awesome. Now that DC doesn't have any of that stuff connected to it anymore, I just don't find as compelled to seek it out. Like I'm sure the story is fantastic. But that's just the way I feel intrinsically, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's tough. And I mean, I think that it's difficult. I do this to the best of my ability. I think it's difficult to completely separate, what like individual stories from how they affect like current status quo. It's like if you're reading current comics, it's really hard to not think, okay, well, this doesn't matter anymore. This is no longer important. But like, I don't know. I push really hard against that. I really resist that, especially because I would be super depressed if I let that affect me too much. Because I mean, my favorite DC stories aren't in canon anymore, but I still love them. It doesn't change how I feel about them. I'm still going to go back and read them again.
Right. Exactly. I mean, And
You
I
know, so
would probably
52 is not going to stop me from reading No Man's Land for the umpteenth time. You know, like
right, and I feel the same way about things that I've already read in the DC universe, like Mark Waid's Flash Run. I'm always gonna like go back and read that and love it. But
oh, but you just mean seeking out new stuff.
seeking out new stuff, yeah. The importance thing isn't really, you know, doesn't matter to me that much. But like, and that's another point I think maybe
You're
about.
just saying you're not compelled by anything current. Like you could like. So are you saying that like you could read a current X-Men thing and be like, oh man, this mentioned this Claremont thing. It's got me wanting to go back to this thing I've never read
Yeah,
before.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I find to be interesting about the Marvel universe specifically. Um, and that's another thing that you brought up about events too. Like, well, after these stories that are supposedly supposed to change the face of the universe, like years later, after they change things and they've moved on to the next one, how relevant is it, as a story are they? In terms of what you need to read. Um,
They've got to have some kind of other inherent value to make them very rereadable, right? Like AVX, I feel like will hold up a bit.
I think it will, but I don't think it's going to go down as like one of the essential Marvel stories of this era to read at all.
Maybe not, although more so than say Fear itself
Oh yeah,
or
definitely. But like of the event books, you know what I mean? Like
yeah, I see what you're saying. But I'm just talking about like how it will hold up upon rereading. You know what I mean? Like you go back to you go back to certain events and like to a point you made really early on in this conversation, where like the book is really just about getting from a place to another place that's maybe even to set up another thing. It's not really so much about the characters. It's not really so much about characters going through
mhm.
any kind of an arc that changes them so much as the universe. And so, what about those events would keep you going back to reading them again? Whereas with AVX, I mean, there's a very specific arc for Cyclops. You know, there's a thing for Wolverine going on through that. I feel like what I'm saying is, as a standalone story, just picking up those 12 issues and reading them, I think it will hold up. I don't know that it will be remembered as an important thing. But just as far as will it hold up to rereading it, even if you aren't thinking about what happened surrounding it? Yeah, I think so.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think some of them will hold up better than others. Like, um, what is it? Secret Invasion. That's one that I feel like people are never like. That was one that people didn't necessarily like in the first place because it was kind of confusing without all the tie-ins to be read. But like,
Yeah,
that's just one example of like a story. What's going to be the value in someone, say, jumping to comics 10, 20 years later that wants to read a Marvel story? Like, that's not what they're going to go to, right?
yeah. I'm thinking of things like Planet Hulk.
Planet Hulk's fantastic.
I mean, like that holds up. I mean, that'll stand up. People go back and read that again.
And then they turned it into an event book, World War Hulk, after that, and I didn't really like it as much.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't really care for World War Hulk. It was just kind of like Hulk fighting people, whereas Planet Hulk was more character driven, and they made it into a big action book when it became an event.
Actually about things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
I feel like for one of these things to be to look like a real standalone story, it has to have some kind of resolution. Obviously,
Yeah,
stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end. If it ends on a cliffhanger, then that means that it's not finished. I mean, if it ends entirely on a cliffhanger, you know what I mean? Like you can finish a story and then have an epilogue. But I mean, like if there's not enough concrete resolution to the story you read, regardless of setting up for a sequel, then it's hard to go back and just read that as its own thing. That's all I'm saying.
right. And I think you can end on a cliffhanger, but like to some degree, and at the same time resolve a lot of
Oh
things.
yeah,
Like Bendis's Daredevil run is the best example of, I think, the end of a run that's also like, I don't know how the writer after this is gonna get out of this corner. Like Daredevil's in jail. He was just the kingpin. He made a lot of bad decisions. He's married. Like that is like the worst corner to put whoever follows you in. And but at the same time, like I felt like he wrapped up everything from his run up to that point.
yeah. It's like a season of television,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
this seems to be kind of my go-to example for this sort of thing right now. You get a season of archy television where you get a beginning, and a middle, and an end, but then there might be an overarching thing that's going to go through more of the series, so that when you get to the end of that season, it wraps up all that stuff. But then it sets up things to do later. So if the thing got canceled, or if you just didn't keep watching it, you'd still feel like you were glad you were there. You know what I mean? Like you weren't sitting through just the first two acts of a 3-act thing. I mean, I wrote my novel that way.
Right.
It has my book has a resolution, but then you find out there's a bigger thing going on that will hopefully someday be actually dealt with. Um, but
Right.
anyway, um, Dan, any last thoughts? Anything you didn't mention that you'd like to?
Um,
This was the most thorough discussion about this topic I've ever had.
yeah, it has been very, very thorough. The only other thing I wanted to mention was like, yeah, I mean, it's to some degree, it's always going to be a perpetual cliffhanger, right? Just the nature of the medium where it just has to keep going, at least for the big two.
That's a great point. Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's a constantly evolving thing. These characters have to keep going. They're designed for. I mean, that's what this. Well, a lot of them actually aren't designed that way, but we we like to keep them in motion. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know. It's a tough it's a tough situation to be in. Um, I just don't. I just don't know how you really solve the problem. And like maybe events are a necessary evil because a lot of people will make the point that events sell a lot of books to these companies, and that allows them to recover the losses from some of the more unpopular books like Scarlet Spider or Captain Marvel, which they can let run for 25 issues. Whereas if you had no event books that were making all this money, they would have only been able to afford to publish like 10 issues of it. Or I don't know exactly how the numbers work, but I think that's a valid thing to look at too. That's something good that they do.
yeah, you're absolutely right, and that's obviously the mature way to look at it, and not to get circular with this, but I mean that brings us all the way back to something you said earlier, which is that these events, I mean, like you don't have to read them. There's no one forcing you to do
Right.
it. And so I mean, like, that's one of the advantages to reading the kind of smaller, more intimate books that aren't impacted by all this other stuff, because you don't have to do that. I mean, like Vince has become not to put Vince on the spot or anything, but I mean, like, he's become kind of a of an indie guy. He reads the kind of books where you don't need that stuff to read it. So like the reason I always with Marvel get a little bit frustrated, we're like, okay, which of the 5 events you did this year is the important one that I need? Is because I read a lot of mainstream. If I was
Right.
just reading like X Factor, for instance,
Right.
or at least X Factor before the new one, because I feel like that's probably going to start really getting in
Yeah,
all
because
the
it's got
X.
characters who are in a movie in it and Gambit.
Yeah, but before that, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Things like
yeah.
that. If I was just reading, say that, and like, what's that book? Hawkeye.
Or Daredevil before Shadowlands, that kind of thing. That's one we didn't
Yeah,
work out. Shadowland's awful. I didn't
or
like that
just
book at all.
well, I was just no, and that's also an event. But I was just
Yeah.
thinking of like intimate books that are out right now that don't really go into anything else that you could read without ever looking at a crossover. You know what I mean? Like there are
Right,
people
and
who
that's what I mean. Daredevil was like that for like years before
oh, I
Shadowlands
see
happened.
what you mean. Yeah, where it just didn't. It wasn't affected or tainted by all that
Right,
by all this
exactly.
interest. But yeah, I mean, this is kind of the catch-22, right? We have buying power. We can vote with our money. We can choose to support what we want to support, and we can choose to read what we want to read. But at the same time, we also will be enticed by things that we're kind of not sure we're really going to want to support, and then the only way you'll know is if you buy them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Mm-hmm.
the difficult thing. That's the medium. That's always been the game.
And the thing of it is, at least with how I buy the events when I go to the store, it's not even necessarily if I buy a copy or not, because I oftentimes don't put an event on my pull list. It's I'm not pre-ordering the book. My store just buys a crap ton of them because he knows they're gonna sell.
Yeah, sure.
So like it's not even at that point me voting with my dollar. Like if I don't buy one copy from my shop owner who ordered a bazillion copies of the book, it's not really gonna matter, right?
Yeah, and I mean, like maybe supporting isn't the word I should have used. You're right. I mean, maybe it's not even so much of like the power of your dollar to vote. Maybe it's just more, well, why what is wrong with us? Why are we complaining about events that nobody was forcing us to read? It's like complaining that you don't like a song on the radio. Okay, don't listen to
Change the
that. So,
station.
yeah, exactly. It's that sort of thing. What I'm saying is they make it a little more complicated than that on us. They make it harder for those of us that read a lot of things that are all interconnected in a company to stay away from.
Yeah, and that's the
And
best case scenario for them because we spend more money on their books.
yeah, exactly. And so that's the only way I feel like I have any credibility at all, that I get off at all in complaining about these things, because you're absolutely right. There's two sides to everything, and like you said, the other side of this is we need those events to have some of the books that we want.
Yeah, I mean, I can put up with inhumanity, whatever that is, existing. If I can have, well, Scarlet Spider got canceled, but like, if I'm sure Loki Agent of Asgard will sell pretty well. But if that book ends up being a dud sales wise, and it's really good and it stays along for a while, I can put up with, having that, B or C list tier book around. I feel like to some degree Marvel doesn't have a lot of lower tier books. Maybe like Superior Foes of Spider-Man. That's probably the lowest tier book that I read from them.
And also, once we don't have something called Superior Spider-Man anymore, you're not going to have that book. Like, I don't see that lasting. Do you?
Unless they rebrand it and
They
relaunch
might,
it number
yeah,
one.
just like they did with Spider-Man Team Up, or Spider or Superior, or whatever that is now.
They canceled Superior and they're doing Amazing now, which so,
No. I'm saying, like, they had that Team Up book before. What was that called when they had Spider-Man
Avenging
Team Up?
Spider-Man, and then
Thanks.
yeah,
And then that became Superior.
yeah,
That's what I was trying to remember. So I'm just saying, like, they could do that. They could just change the title like they did with that. Um, so I had one more thing I was going to say, and now I'm trying to remember what it was. I thought it was a really important thing to say. Um,
and maybe with the DC like bat.
oh, I know what it
Oh,
was.
sure.
Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
And the in terms of the boosting the sales thing, like I bet those crossover things that they do with the bat books all the time at DC like help sell more copies of the lower tier books that are tying into some kind of big story. Like, because some people will feel obligated. Oh, Gothtopia, I want to read it, but it crosses into Batgirl, which is a book I don't read usually. I guess I'll buy it this month because it has the banner on the top of it, and
Oh
that
yeah.
book gets to stay around because of those kind of
Well,
sales.
that's the whole reason we do these crossover books or these crossover events into other books like
Yeah,
that,
exactly.
is to get people to try out other things. The last thing I want to say, this will be my absolute last thing,
Sure.
is I think a fair, because like I wanted to be really fair and as objective as I could about this and look at both sides of the pros and cons of the kind of gimmickiness of these things. I think a very, very fair criticism, though, is publish the trades of these things faster, and like you said, with right away, without all the tie-ins in them, because people ought to, if they want to, wait for the trades and find out from friends or reviews or things if they really want to read the whole thing and then go buy the trade, get the book. They shouldn't have to wait a year. And DC has been especially bad about this. It has taken them a full year to finally start putting out trades for a Death of the Family. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree. And that's even like the hardcovers, which are like the premium priced ones. It's going to take even
Yeah.
longer for the paperbacks to come out.
I think I understand why they put out the hardcovers first. I can live with that. I mean, like I'm not even buying. I don't even buy trade that much. I'm just saying for people that do, they shouldn't have to wait forever because it's not fair. They're gonna have a hard time not finding out everything that happens in a book, like we talked about earlier. So I think put out the hardcover a couple 3 months after something is over, and then or after an arc is done. I mean, I really like it when Marvel manages to get book, and IDW is really fast. Like, I really like it when like say Marvel manages to get out the first trade of like the first arc while only the second or third issue of that arc of the next arc is out. That's great.
It is. Yeah.
But put out the hardcover and then a month later put out the. But don't string people along. That's not fair. There's people that only read and trade. It's driving Eric crazy. He's just a trade guy now. There's a ton of stuff that he wants to read that he's 12, 14 months behind on.
Well,
That's
because of DC's delay.
Yeah, that's not fair.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. But yeah, I don't.
But anyway,
I feel like we've explored this as thoroughly as possible. But yeah, let us know what you guys think. I don't know. I like you said, I don't want to seem like I'm coming down on the side of I hate events, all of them absolutely and utterly. There's ones that I've liked. There's positives to having them around. And I think in general, Marvel and DC on the whole have gotten more consistent in putting out ones that are better than the ones they were doing in the early 2000s.
I completely agree with that. Yeah,
Yeah.
back when this first started becoming a we must do this every 6 months to a year thing.
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned, like Secret Invasion and stuff before. Like, there's no comparison between that and Infinity. Even like Infinity's much better than that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, everybody, thanks always for listening to the podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. And Dan and I will see you again very soon
Yeah.
for live comic reviews. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Dan.
See you later.
Bye.